The dishes have been sitting in the sink for 3 days. You know this because you counted. You washed your own. You always do. But those ones, the ones that aren't yours, they just sit there, waiting, like they're testing you. And the weird thing is, you've said something, maybe more than once, maybe more than 10 times. And it went fine, sort of. There was an agreement, a yeah, I'll get to it. And then nothing changed. So now you're standing in the kitchen at 7 in the morning, tired before the day has even started, staring at someone else's mess and doing the math in your head. If I clean it, I'm enabling this. If I don't clean it, I have to look at it all day. And if I bring it up again, I'm the one who sounds like a broken record. There is no good option. And you are exhausted. And here's the thing that makes it so much worse. It's not just the mess, it's what the mess means to you. It's coming home after a long day, dropping your keys by the door, and already feeling your shoulders tighten before you've even turned the lights on, because you know what's waiting. You've walked into this moment 100 times. Your body starts bracing before your eyes even adjust. That's not a personality flaw. That's a nervous system that has learned to anticipate stress. Here's what most people don't understand about this situation. The frustration you feel isn't really about the dishes. It's not about the laundry left on the floor, or the empty toilet paper roll that never gets replaced, or the takeout containers stacked next to, not inside, the trash can. Those are just the surface. What you're actually feeling is something much deeper. And science has a very specific name for it. But here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just a cleanliness preference. This is a nervous system issue. And once you understand that, everything changes. Let's start with your side of this. People who maintain clean, organized environments aren't just being particular. Research in environmental psychology shows that physical clutter directly impacts the brain's ability to regulate stress. A 2010 study from Princeton University found that visual disorder competes for your attention at a neurological level. Your brain literally cannot fully relax when it detects unresolved environmental stimuli. Think about that for a second. When you walk into a messy room, your brain doesn't just see a mess, it sees a problem, an unfinished task, a signal that something is wrong. And your nervous system responds accordingly. Low-grade cortisol, background tension, a faint but persistent feeling that you can't quite settle. You're not being controlling. You're not being dramatic. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It's reading your environment and sending you a signal. This isn't resolved yet. And here's what most people don't realize. That signal doesn't stop. It runs in the background all day like an app you forgot to close. You're having a conversation, but part of your mind is still on the kitchen. You're trying to relax on the couch, but the pile on the coffee table keeps pulling your attention back. You're lying in bed at night, and instead of winding down, your nervous system is still quietly running its checklist. Some people go to sleep and their brain powers down. Yours doesn't. Not in a messy home. Not yet. Now here's the twist. Because the person you live with, their brain is doing the same thing, just with completely different settings. Psychologists describe this as a difference in sensory gating thresholds. Some nervous systems are highly attuned to environmental disorder. Others simply aren't wired to register it as a threat. For someone with a high sensory gating threshold, a pile of dishes genuinely doesn't create distress. It's not that they don't care about you. It's that their nervous system isn't sending them the same alarm signal yours is sending you. This is the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The person who doesn't clean isn't always lazy. They aren't always selfish. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, they literally don't see it the way you see it. Their brain files it differently. And here's what most people don't realize. That gap, that difference in perception, is one of the most quietly corrosive forces in any shared living situation. Not because either person is bad, but because both people are operating on completely different internal logic, and neither one fully understands the others. Stay with me, because this next part explains why the conversation never seems to stick. When you bring up the mess, what are you really communicating? You're saying, this environment is affecting my ability to feel okay. That's a nervous system need. That's real. But the person on the receiving end often hears something different. They hear, you think I'm a bad person, or you're trying to control me, or simply, I'm being criticized again. Psychologists call this a needs translation failure. Two people talking about the same topic, but operating from completely different emotional frameworks. One person is communicating distress, the other is receiving judgment, and the conversation loops because the real need is never actually heard. This is why just talk about it advice almost never works long term. The problem isn't communication frequency, it's communication translation. And the cruelest part, the more often you bring it up, the more the other person hears criticism instead of pain. And the less you bring it up, the more invisible your need becomes. There's no clean way out of that loop, just different versions of the same quiet frustration. Now, let's talk about the 3 types of people in this situation. Because not everyone who lives with a non-cleaner experiences it the same way. The first type is what we might call the quiet absorber. This is the person who stopped saying anything a long time ago. They just clean it. They do the extra load of laundry. They wipe down the counter before they can cook. They've made a silent decision that arguing isn't worth the energy. But inside, something is building. Every time they pick up after someone else, there's a small withdrawal from an account that never gets refilled. They don't explode, they don't make scenes, they just slowly, quietly start to disconnect. Not from the mess, from the person. The second type is the negotiator. This person keeps trying to find the system that finally works. Charts, schedules, zone divisions. A very reasonable conversation every few months. They believe in solutions. They genuinely think that if they can just communicate it correctly, it will click. And sometimes it does, for a while. But then life gets busy, and the system quietly falls apart, and they're back at the kitchen sink, doing the math again. The negotiator hasn't given up, but they're getting tired of being the only one who keeps trying. The third type is the internalizer. This is the one who has started to wonder if the problem is them. Maybe they're too sensitive. Maybe they're asking for too much. Maybe other people just don't care about this stuff and they need to relax. They've been told, directly or indirectly, that their standards are unrealistic, and they've started to believe it. This one is the most painful, because the question, am I asking for too much, is almost always asked by the person asking for the least. Which type are you? Drop it in the comments. Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you cleaned up after someone who didn't notice. Not the frustration of it, but the feeling underneath the frustration. What was actually there? For a lot of people, it's grief. Not dramatic grief, quiet grief. The kind that comes from wanting to share a space and realizing that what you mean by shared and what they mean by it are very different things. You pictured something, a home that felt calm, a relationship where the basic rhythms of life felt mutual, where walking through the front door was the exhale, not the beginning of another task you hadn't signed up for. And the distance between that picture and reality, that's where the real weight lives. It's also where something important gets misread. Some people stay because they genuinely love the person. Some people clean because they're holding on to hope that things will shift. Some people go silent because they've run out of language for a need that keeps getting dismissed. None of that is weakness. All of it is a form of loyalty that costs more than it looks like from the outside. The tension you feel isn't a character flaw. It's not anxiety disorder, or control issues, or perfectionism run amok. It is a completely logical response to chronic environmental stress in a space where you are supposed to be able to finally stop. Your nervous system has been sending a signal for a long time, and nobody has been answering it. Of course you're worn down. And here's something worth saying out loud. The fact that your environment matters to you is not a burden. It's not a quirk to manage or a sensitivity to apologize for. It is information about who you are and what you need to feel okay in your own life. You are allowed to need that. You are allowed to say it matters. You don't have to keep shrinking the need to make it easier for someone else to ignore. The kid who grew up in chaos and learned to find safety and order didn't become controlling. They became adaptive. The person who needs their space to feel settled before they can settle themselves. That's not a demand. That's just how their nervous system learned to function. And that's worth understanding about yourself without apology. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for something real, to feel at home in your own home. That's not a high standard. That's a human one. If this video puts something into words that you've been carrying for a while, please subscribe. There's more of this kind of content coming. Different topics, same depth. I'll see you in the next one.